Welcome back. We have the week number 13 spread picks. Last week went under 500, 7 and 8. So on the season, we're now 10 games below 500. So that's got to change soon, and hopefully this could be the week to turn things around. It's already week 13, so I'm running out of time. We got to get back to 500. So as always, I will leave each game in the description to help you guys out. Leave a like, it always helps out, and let's get into it. First game, the 4-7 Pittsburgh Steelers will face the 5-7 Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are favorites by 1 point, and the Falcons, they are 4-2 at home this year, so I definitely take that into account when making this pick. I'm going to take Atlanta -1. They're still in this division race in the NFC South, which is like, it's terrible. I think every team in that division is below 500. Even the Panthers and Saints have a chance, which is crazy, but it's true. It is a short week for Pittsburgh, having played on Monday night. I know they got that win, but I really haven't been too impressed by them. They did beat the Saints a couple weeks ago, okay, but the Saints have looked pretty awful for the most part. I do think the Steelers are trending in the right direction. I don't think they're as bad as they were like a few weeks ago, but this is a game that Atlanta should be able to move the ball. Once again, they play well at home, so it's only 1 point. I will take Atlanta -1. Next, we have the 4-8 Packers, at the 3-9 Chicago Bears. Usually the Bears, they tend to have a bad record most years, but the Packers being 4-8, still pretty shocking. Anyway, Aaron Rodgers expects to play in this game, and of course, he owns the Bears. He still owns them, and they did beat them by a lot earlier this year. I know when they played in week number 2, the Packers won that game 27-10. I think Chicago was actually, the game was closer than the score implicated, because I remember Justin Fields got stopped on the 1-inch line, so that should have been a closer game. But anyway, even with that said, I will take Green Bay -3.5 on the road. This might be the last time Aaron Rodgers ever plays Chicago, and I can't see him going out on a loss. I mean, both of these teams have had horrible records the past 2 months or so. But that Chicago secondary is decimated by injuries. I mean, they had 3 starters out versus the Jets last week, and they lost Eddie Jackson for the season. And Justin Fields, he is supposed to play in this game. I know Trevor Siemian had the, season-ending surgery, but Justin Fields has that shoulder injury that kept him out last week versus the Jets. I don't know how much he's going to run the ball. And if Justin Fields is just a pocket passer, I don't think he's nearly as effective, obviously. So I will take Green Bay -3.5 on the road. Next, we have the 4-7 Jaguars at the 4-7 Lions. So both teams, same record. A lot of 4-win teams out here, it seems like. I don't know, not very good. Anyway, the Jaguars are favored by 8 points, which I guess is not much of a surprise. They had a pretty impressive win last week versus the Ravens. The Lions, though, they have been playing better football. I think we all know that. They beat Green Bay, beat Chicago, beat the Giants, and they had a real chance to beat the Bills on Thanksgiving, and they have not played since then. So that, of course, that was a tough loss for them. But in this game, I will take the Lions. The Lions offense definitely plays better at home. I think the entire team plays better at home from what I've seen this year. Guys like DeAndre Swift, even Josh Reynolds, who have been battling injuries, they are getting healthier, and I do like that, of course, for the Lions offense. And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he has looked good, I guess, the last few games or so, but he hasn't shown it consistently. I thought after week 3, when they beat the Chargers, I think it was 37-10, I thought Lawrence would break out there. Then he took a couple steps back, so I'm not completely sold he'll be dominant in this game, but that Lions secondary is definitely beatable, so it feels like a very high-scoring game. I'm actually looking now. Over-under's 51, so makes a lot of sense. I might even take the over. If you have the fantasy football wide receivers in here, like Christian Kirk and even Zay Jones and Amon-Ra St. Brown, should be a nice day for you. But anyway, I don't know if I said my pick yet or not, but I'm taking the Lions +1 here. They are the better, home team. I think they still play hard, obviously, and coming off that tough loss, having extended rest, I think Detroit will pull this one off. Next, we have the New York Jets at 7-4 at the 9-2 Minnesota Vikings. Who would have thought these records would be the way they are in the beginning of the year? I mean, I was high on the Vikings, but I am not going to lie, I did not expect 7 wins for the Jets, maybe the entire year, especially through week 12. Anyway, The Vikings are favored by 3 in this matchup, which does tell you on a neutral site the books would actually have this as a pick'em. So that's kind of interesting. I guess maybe they are respecting the Jets a lot, or maybe they think the Vikings are not as good as their record says they are. I don't know. Look at that how you want. But I'm going to take the Jets. I'm trying not to drink the Kool-Aid too much. I know they beat Chicago, but I just went over how Chicago's basically entire secondary was out last week, so I don't put too much stock into it, but it was a dominant victory, having beat them 31-10. If Zach Wilson was still the starter, I probably would not take the Jets, but I do think there is some potential here for Mike White to have a decent game once again. He might throw an interception, I completely get that, but the Jets' offensive upside is so much better when he's in there, and he did make some nice throws to, Elijah Moore had one nice touchdown catch. There was a couple to Garrett Wilson. So the Jets offense was looking pretty good. The Jets defense, they are legit. I know they haven't played the best competition of late, but the Jets defense, they look as good as advertised. As I said, the offense is better with Mike White, and the Jets, they have the corners and the pass rush to keep up with the Vikings. I think one of the best cornerback wide receiver matchups we'll see all year is Justin Jefferson versus Sauce Gardner. Very excited to see who gets the best of who in that matchup. And the Jets, they have a pass rush that's good enough to take care of Minnesota's offensive line. I'm going back a few weeks here, but 2-3 weeks ago when Minnesota played the Cowboys pass rush, I think Cousins was sacked like 7 times. I'm not saying it'll be that excessive, but Minnesota's offensive line, although they've had times they've looked good, they have shown the ability to have really bad games and bad matchups, and this might be a bad matchup for them. So I will take the Jets +3 on the road. Next, the 7-5 Commanders are at the New York Giants, who are 7-4. The Commanders are favorites by 2.5 on the road, which you don't love to see. So I guess for the purposes of this show, I'm going to take Washington, because at least if they win, I guess I win something. So, the Giants have a lot of injuries right now, missing Adoree Jackson, Xavier McKinney, definitely big for them. I don't know if the Giants have the secondary to stick with McLaurin and Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson. It's definitely a concern for me. And, of course, Washington has the guys on their defensive line that can blow up the Giants' offensive line. So the Giants' offense has not looked right the last couple weeks. Same with Saquon Barkley. So that kind of goes hand in hand. So hopefully for my sake, Taylor Heineke makes some mistakes and the Giants take advantage and get some easy points. But I do think Washington's in a good spot here. And, the Giants are the more injured team. Washington has their bye next week, so I would not be surprised if the Commanders pull it off, but I'm going to take them -2.5. Next, the 7-4 Titans are at the 10-1 Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are 4.5-point favorites at home. I'm going to take Philly -4.5. I mean, Tennessee, they can stop the run very well, but that secondary is very beatable. And if this was the Eagles team last year, I probably would take the Titans. But now that the Eagles have shown they can pass the ball, of course, adding A.J. Brown, who's in a revenge spot, by the way, that added so much to their passing offense. Yes, they are without Dallas Goedert. Their offense has still looked fine. Of course, they almost had the most rushing yards in franchise history last week versus the Packers. Philly's defense overall is better, in my opinion, than the Titans, and of course Philly's the home team, and it's only 5 points. I mean, yeah, I could see it being a field goal game or a 4-point game, but it doesn't feel like a lot. And Tennessee, I mean, they have that division wrapped up for the most part. I'm not saying they are going to drop the game on purpose, but they can afford it. I mean, the Eagles, they do have a couple teams on their tail. I mean, the Cowboys are 2 games back, I guess the Giants technically, or even Washington. So, and for my sake personally, I hope Philly wins by like 25 points and they get full of themselves because they play the Giants the next week and maybe they look past them and lose to them. I don't know. I'm going like, galaxy brain here, but I will take the Eagles -4.5. Next, the 3-8 Denver Broncos are at the 7-4 Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are favorites by 8.5 points, which is not a surprise based on how Denver has looked this year. I mean, the Ravens have a good record overall. Of course, they lost on that 2-point conversion last week, but they haven't looked that great, which is weird to say because they've won 4 of their past 5. And if they did stop that 2-point conversion, they'd be on a 5-game win streak. But something just seems off about the Ravens right now. And Denver's defense is still really good. I know they gave up like 24 to the Panthers last week. That's not a good look. But I do think at some point, I don't know. I don't want to say Denver's going to turn it around per se, but it's not going to be this bad. I think maybe the Broncos finally hit rock bottom last week. At least I hope so, and they can get some type of offense in this game. You had some defensive players screaming in Russell Wilson's face. So Denver plus 8.5 is going to be my pick. Hopefully with Russ getting yelled at and Nathaniel Hackett coaching for his job, and Baltimore not looking good in a while, and Denver's defense still playing at a high level. Hopefully they can keep that game close. I still think the Ravens win the game outright, maybe by a touchdown or so, but if it's 8.5, I will take Denver. Next, the 4-7 Cleveland Browns are at the 1-9-1 Houston Texans. This game, of course, is mostly known for the Deshaun Watson return to not only the NFL, but going back to Houston for his first game. I mean, you could not have planned it any better. What a coincidence. Anyway, so I am going to take Cleveland -7. My only concern is that the crowd in Houston will be very hostile and Deshaun Watson can't handle it or something. That's my only concern. On the field, I really have no concerns at all. I think that Nick Chubb will have a massive game because Houston does not stop the run. And they'll give Deshaun Watson some easy throws, hopefully have some schemes where they get some guys open downfield, and it'll be a nice Browns win. It'll be easy. So as long as the pressure doesn't get to Deshaun Watson, which I don't know what he's going to look like, I'm definitely curious, but it's only a -7. So I'll take Cleveland to win this game by probably double digits, so I will take them -7. Next, we have the 6-5 Seattle Seahawks at the 3-8 Los Angeles Rams, who are falling apart. That entire roster feels like it's injured. Matthew Stafford was just placed on IR. His season's pretty much over. I'd be shocked if he's back. Same with Cooper Kupp at this point. We know Allen Robinson's done, and I believe Aaron Donald's out for this game as well. Despite all that, I'm still taking the Rams as a +7 because I don't know how anybody will pick the Rams. And I feel like when you are against the masses, it's a good thing for betting. So it is John Wolford starting instead of, what was his name, Perkins or something? The other guy, Bryce Perkins. And I guess, Wolford did play in that playoff game a couple years ago, and he looked all right. So, I mean, I feel like they can move the ball with him. And Seattle, they are coming off back-to-back losses. I mean, maybe it's like a spot where they're due to put up a better game, but maybe this is maybe we kind of overrated Seattle. I don't know. So I guess it could be either or, but I feel like Sean McVay as a 7-point underdog at home, I'm going to trust that they can get some, points on the board, and their defense can at least not look atrocious, and they can keep that game somewhat close. I would still think Seattle wins it, but I will take the Rams +7. Next, the 8-3 Dolphins. They are at the 7-4 San Francisco 49ers. Could be the best game of the day, honestly. I made a last-second change here, so it is the Niners are 4-point favorites, and I was thinking these teams are kind of equal. I'll take the points, right? But I don't know. I think with the injury report and Miami being down a couple offensive linemen here, one of them being Teron Armstead, who is doubtful, and I saw that Austin Jackson's out as well, and with the Niners having a great defensive line, I think San Francisco can get good pressure in this game. Now, of course, Mike McDaniel, who did come from the 49ers, so there is familiarity throughout this matchup, he can definitely scheme guys open and get the ball out of Tua's hands quickly, but it will make it harder to run the ball and things like that with Jeff Wilson, a former Niner. So a lot of connections in this game. But I'm going to take San Francisco -4. They have been playing much better. I do think their offense can put up numbers in this game. And the Dolphins defense, they've had times they have not looked good this year. Plenty of games where they've given up somewhere in the high 20s, even 30s, and this could be one of those games. The Niners offense, I know Jimmy was kind of hobbled last week, but they should be fine. So I will take San Francisco -4, although I don't feel all that confident about it. Next, we have the 9-2 Kansas City Chiefs at the 7-4 Cincinnati Bengals. And although the Bengals have been playing better football lately, I am going to take the Chiefs as 1.5-point favorites on the road. I think that, Cincinnati, they're moving in the right direction. They have a chance, once again, to make a playoff run. I know some of that last year was sort of magical, and I guess some things broke their way. But, Cincinnati, they have a good roster. They're pretty legit. But the Chiefs are in this revenge game spot. They lost to the Bengals last year in the playoffs, of course. I think it was, the AFC Championship game last year. So, of course, they want to get their revenge, and I trust Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to do that. I do think the Chiefs are still a better team, and you have Jamar Chase coming off the injury. I don't even know if he's like 100%, maybe not. So, Kansas City, unlike last year, can get to the quarterback. They're one of like the top 10 teams in sacks this year. So last year, that was a problem for them. This time, they can hopefully get to Joe Burrow, who, of course, has had his games where he sacked a bunch. So it should be a fun game. This actually might be the best game of the day. I actually forgot about this. So either this game or the San Fran versus Miami game, either or, they'll both be good. But I will take Kansas City -1.5 on the road. Next, the LA Chargers at 6-5. They're at the 4-7 Las Vegas Raiders, who have come off back-to-back overtime wins. But with that said, I think the Raiders are kind of in a bad spot here. Sometimes there are just games in the NFL season where teams are just not in the best spot. And coming off back-to-back OT games, which it's probably very tiresome for that entire roster that's been playing, and even the coaches to a degree. And the Raiders, in a look-ahead spot, they play next Thursday. I think it's the Rams, so that's going to be an awful game. I don't even want to watch it. But so yeah, they're playing back-to-back overtime games. They have a Thursday game upcoming. I just think it's a lot against them right now. And the Chargers, talent-wise, are still probably better than the Las Vegas Raiders, who I know got off to a very rough start. Maybe the Raiders just have this incredible comeback and they make a playoff push. And maybe. We saw the Dolphins do the same thing last year. But I do think the Raiders' defense especially has a lot of flaws. I am concerned that Josh Jacobs will kill them in this game because, the Chargers never stop the run. Jacobs, of course, has been amazing lately, but he does have that calf injury, so in the event he misses, I feel a lot better about the Chargers, but I will take them as a +1 in this game. Next, we have the 4-7-1 Colts back on national TV because we just have to see that, right? They are at the Cowboys, who are 8-3. I will take Indy +10.5. I'm not being a Cowboy hater here. I just think that Dallas, they have had problems stopping the run this year overall. And I do think if you run the ball well with Jonathan Taylor, you can keep yourself in the game. The Colts scoring defense, they're 11th best in the NFL. So I think they have the formula to kind of stay in games. Of course, the Colts are not nearly as good as we thought they would be coming into this year, but I think they have a good enough roster to at least keep games close. If they lose by 10, I win the spread. So you know what? Maybe Dallas wins 31-21, but I'll take that for the purposes of this show. Of course, Dallas, they have been very impressive, but there are scenarios, as a Brooklyn Nets fan, I see it all the time, of teams playing down to their opponent. And hopefully Dallas has one of those games where they do play down to their opponent. Like we saw it on Thanksgiving. Dallas did not have a good first half versus the Giants, and they might not have been taking them as seriously because the Giants were heavily injured, and the Cowboys were once again like 10-point favorites in that game as well. So, yeah, I will take the Colts. I don't feel great about it, but I'm taking them +10.5. Lastly, Monday Night Football, a game where a team with 4 wins plays a team with 5 wins, which is crazy to think about. The Saints are at the Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are favored by 4. I'm going to take Tampa. I know they have not been impressive at all, and they're coming off a pretty bad loss to the Cleveland Browns where they probably should have won. But, the Saints have looked kind of lifeless offensively lately. I still think Tampa overall, they have a lot of talent on their defense, so they should figure it out. And maybe Andy Dalton has a game where he's sacked a bunch of times and throws an interception or two. I don't know. I know Tom Brady has not had the best regular seasons versus the Saints since coming over to Tampa, but I think last time they played, he did pretty well. So maybe that's like kind of debunked at this point. But the Saints have a pretty good pass rush. That's the one thing that concerns me here with Tampa's offensive line being banged up throughout the entire year. But outside of that, I think Tampa's a lot better. So I will take the Bucks -4. And hopefully that works out for me. So anyway, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And I feel good about this week. I feel better about this week. So hopefully I come back to you guys over 500. And hey, maybe I have a fantastic week and even get back to 500, which I would not expect. But I did have a week this year where it happened in the opposite way. Like the reason I got in this hole in the first place. I think I went like 2-11 one week or something crazy. Like it was like week 3 or week 2. I had an insane, like just a terrible week, the worst week you can have possibly, and that's why I'm in this like 10 game under 500 hole. So maybe the opposite happens and I have a great week. So I don't know, I feel good about this slate of games, and hopefully that is good news for me. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys next time.